Greetings and welcome to another lecture in Introductory Psychology. This one involves the reason why some people are more stressed out than others, or at least some of the possible reasons. There's all sorts of possibilities as to why one person would find a certain event stressful when another wouldn't. It could be learning experience. It could also be something like the person's personality, type A versus type B versus type C versus type H. But indeed, it can also be other factors that I'm going to be talking about here. Now, one of the factors that can influence how bad stress is predictability. We prefer stressors that we can predict. We prefer stressors that we know are coming. Now, yes, this does mean that we can work ourselves up into a tumultuous uproar because we know the stressor is coming and we know when it's arriving. But it also means that when we know that it's not arriving, we can relax a bit. If you never know when a stressor is going to be arriving, that's a whole lot more stressful than if you can predict. For instance, in the classes that I teach, people know exactly when their tests are. They know when the tests are coming. I tell them at the beginning of the semester. So while the tests are stressful, the students at least know when they're coming. The students can prepare for them. But let's say I decided to teach a class where I didn't tell students when the tests were coming. If I decided to teach a class that I would have sort of pop tests in. And I suspect students would find that a whole lot more stressful because they would never know when they were coming to class if there was going to be a test. They would have to study all the time, which might not be a bad thing, by the way, in terms of learning the material. But I suspect, when I've mentioned that to my face-to-face classes, they have told me in no uncertain terms that if I did decide to do that, that soon I would have absolutely no one in the class. Because knowing when the tests are coming is stressful enough, but not knowing when they're coming is even worse. Having control over the stressor, having control over the duration, how long the stressor lasts, can actually reduce the feeling of stress. There was research done where subjects were divided into two groups. One group was told to watch these really gruesome pictures of the aftermaths of car accidents. And these were really stress-inducing. They were horrible, these pictures. That first group could control, individually, how long they looked at each picture by pressing a button. Now, it might mean that they had to look at the next picture, which could be even worse. But they did have control over how long they looked at them. There was a second group that looked, on a person-by-person basis, at the pictures just as long as the first did, but they didn't have a button. So everything was identical between the two groups in terms of the pictures they saw, the order of the pictures, and how long they viewed the pictures. The only difference was one group had control and one didn't. And the group that had control over duration found the pictures less stressful than the group that didn't. And think to yourself of this. Have you ever been at work and it's a really bad day, or you're at school and things are just all piling up, and you say to yourself, you know what? I could quit. I could drop out. I don't have to sit here and do this. I don't have to put up with this crap. And even if you have no intention whatsoever of quitting, doesn't it make you feel better? For just that little time, and you're saying to yourself, I don't have to do this. I don't have to put up with this. I could quit. I could leave right now. I could get up right now and walk out that door. And even though you would never do it, it makes you feel better because you know that you could. Even if this control is an illusion, even if this control is something that you never intend to exercise, it still could make you feel better. So control over duration can help with stressors. What the event means to you. This goes back to what I talked about in motivation. We were talking about expectancy. People will put up with a lot if the outcome is something that they really, really, really want. Researchers looked at women who were pregnant, and they interviewed these women, and they divided them. It's a correlational study, but they divided them up into women who were just completely and utterly and totally excited about being pregnant and having the baby, and the second group that was not quite as excited. Maybe it was a bad time, maybe it had been an accident, maybe, whatever. They weren't as excited. Maybe it just hadn't been planned. And they follow these women throughout pregnancy and labor and delivery, which can be very stressful. Ask anyone who's been through it. And afterwards they said to ask these women, so how stressful did you find the pregnancy, the labor, and the delivery. And the women who were really excited about having the babies basically said, well, it was stressful, but it wasn't that bad. I'd do it again because look, now I have my baby and this is fantastic. The group that wasn't as excited, when they were asked how they felt, they basically said, oh my God, it was horrible. It was the worst experience ever. I don't know why the human race isn't extinct. Oh my God. The only difference was how much they wanted to go through the process. Okay? So this is why, and this also works when it's an illusion. So if you have a class, for instance, that you just don't want to take, just try to convince yourself that getting through it and getting to the end of it will be a fantastic thing, and you'll get what you want and everything, and it might help the way you look at it. Okay? It really might. It certainly couldn't hurt. Make it something that's important to you. Make it something that... Another way to think of cognitive evaluation would be to think about how children react when they get sick during the school year. If they get sick and they miss a day of school, most kids are happy. They're very happy to be sick and miss a day of school. That means they don't have to go to school. Isn't that wonderful? On the other hand, what if they're sick, say, on the weekend when they were supposed to go have fun somewhere? And all of a sudden, sickness is just the most horrible thing ever. Adults in some ways are the opposite. When adults are sick during the week, it's bad because you miss work and you have to find somebody to do your work. You have to make up the work and you're not going to get paid. On the other hand, if you get sick on a day off, then you can just sort of stay home and veg. So both of those are also examples of cognitive evaluation. What's also important in terms of stress is how well prepared you feel you are to handle the stressor. If you think you can handle the stressor, if you think that you can do this, if you think that you can just conquer it or beat it or whatever verb you want to use, you're going to find the event less stressful than someone who thinks that they cannot. For instance, if someone is seriously injured, someone is bleeding, someone is in a cardiac arrest, just your average person on the street is probably going to find that very stressful because other than calling 911, there's not much they can do. But if a person has training in medicine, if they're a nurse or a doctor or an EMT, for instance, they're going to find the situation less stressful because they know what to do and they know that they can do it. I run into this from time to time when I teach statistics because for some reason students have come to the well, I won't say realization, but they've somehow convinced themselves that statistics is just the class of doom, that no one passes it, that it's hard, and that you might as well not even try, and that's where the problem comes in. Because then we start running into things like self-fulfilling prophecies. If you think a class is so hard that there's no way on earth you can pass it, you're not going to try very hard, are you? And so what I did the last time I taught stats, and what I plan to do in the future, is I went in and I started working on people's feelings of competency. I started literally with basic math. I started with addition and subtraction. And I knew I was in trouble and that they were stressed out. Well, first of all, they were looking at me like deer in headlights. But the other thing was that I asked them what 3 plus 4 was, and they all got out their calculators. And I was just like, no, you have fingers. You can do 3 plus 4. Okay. And we worked our way through simple algebra, because quite frankly, statistics in many ways is algebra. Well, if you're talking about the math part, and we worked our way in, and eventually, it was a very vocal class. It was very amusing. I'd come in and I'd be, okay, well, now we're going to get started on chapter 15. We're going to get started on the t-test. And the whole class would just be like, oh, no, we don't want to do the t-test. Can't we just keep doing the f-test? We like doing the f-test. And I finally stopped them after they said that a few times. And I said, what did you just say? And they said, we want to keep doing the f-test. And I said, when you started this class, did you ever think that a sentence like that would ever pass your lips? That you would be saying, oh, I want to do the f-test. And they said, no. I said, why are you saying it? They said, because we know we can do the f-test. Well, they could do the t-test as well. And it turns out that everyone who stuck with the class passed. So never go in thinking, oh, I can't do this. Oh, I guess if you say to yourself enough times that you can't do it, guess what? You're not going to be able to do it. But in a lot of cases, like those students in the statistics class, just go in and you'll feel a lot less stressed out if you convince yourself, whether it's true or not, that you can do it. And you might surprise yourself and find that you do quite well, as a lot of my students did in that class. Lastly, we have social support. It really helps when you're stressed out to have people to talk to and complain to. To talk about, oh my God, I'm so stressed out because this is happening and this is happening and this is happening, and people listen, and that's a really great thing. And then they might tell you their problems, and you might indeed find out then that their problems are worse than yours, and you're going to feel better. And I mean, it really does help to have people to talk to. And in fact, it's been found there's a correlation between not having people to talk to and depression. Now, whether that's a cause and effect, we don't know. It might be having been depressed, because when you're depressed, you either don't want to talk, you're always talking about the same thing, and eventually people are going to drift away. But it really does help to have people to vent to. I know my students, for instance, in my face-to-face classes, after a test, they leave and they will start, complaining to one another about the test and how it sucked and everything else. And I tell them, when I tell them that I know they're doing this, they all look very guilty. And I tell them, well, that's fine, just don't let me hear it because I will have to correct you. And then I tell them that they may not know it, but professors do much the same thing. We also vent to one another about, oh my God, can you believe this sentence? Or, we don't tend to use names when we do this, unlike students who vent about professors. But we do tend to, look at this test, is this bad? And we try to get support from each other in order to get through the stress of being professors. Because trust me, if I had a choice between being a professor and being a student, I'd be a student. The pressures are less. I only have to worry about myself as a student. As a professor, I have to worry about all those other people. But at any rate, it helps to have people to talk to. And if you don't have people to talk to, it might help, for instance, to write this down. People used to keep journals. Now they keep blogs. And a lot of blogs and journals were about how awful everything is and how stressed out I am. Because even writing something down can make you feel better. Or talking to a pet can make you feel better. You just got to talk to something. So indeed, having a way to sort of vent the stress can reduce the effect of the stress on you. So all of these things can affect how stressful a particular event is.